ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. So, um, yeah, welcome everyone. I think this is like our ninth week together. So, on paper it may seem that we've not made a ton of progress because we're on page 20, but that's only on paper because I know we've covered a lot of foundational topics which build a strong ground for the rest of what is to follow. Sumanji, if you can read this and the format, just for some of you all who are new, I see a couple of new faces. Just one quick call out. It's a requirement, a strong requirement to turn your cameras on if you are part of the session, and it's a requirement. So please, everyone, just show yourselves, and that way we'll have an interactive session. Okay, Sumanji, please continue.
Moksha is not salvation. Moksha, as we have said, is not an equivalent to salvation, as is commonly thought. Nor is it some kind of accomplishment other than yourself. As freedom from something, however, moksha could be considered a negative accomplishment of sorts. Nevertheless, there is nothing more positive than moksha. Once we say freedom, the question is freedom from what? The answer is simply freedom from something I do not want. No one wants freedom from what he or she wants. Therefore, no one wants freedom from artha or kama, securities and pleasures. We want artha, kama, a little bit of dharma plus moksha. Moksha is not freedom from artha or kama. That which artha provides, moksha cannot provide. But that which moksha provides cannot be provided by artha, kama, and dharma combined. A person who has moksha also has the freedom to pursue the other three human ends, artha, kama, and dharma, if he or she so chooses. This then is real freedom and not freedom from these pursuits. And who is it that undertakes these pursuits? The person called Purusha in Sanskrit, meaning any person, young or old, man or woman, Indian or American. This Purusha, the person, is the one who is after artha and kama.
Okay. Any questions here? Okay. So just a few comments. I think we've touched upon this earlier, but it's worth repeating again, especially since I see a few new folks as well. Pujya Swamiji was very particular about the use of Sanskrit expressions when it comes to unfolding the teachings of Shastra. And so words such as salvation for moksha or soul for atma, they don't really work. In fact, they are quite misleading, and there's a good reason for that. Like, a language evolves in conformity with the culture within which it is born. So a language's purpose is to express the nuances of the culture where the language has taken birth, pretty much, right? So if we are born in a culture where you have these purusharthas, where you have moksha as a committed pursuit, then you will also have a language which is able to capture these nuances and to convey in a very airtight manner the precise meaning of what it is that one is wishing to communicate. So unfortunately, if you read these paperback books on Sanatana Dharma, especially even I would say even written by many Indians, old and new, you'll come across these uh, you know I would say problematic translations, such as using salvation for moksha. So salvation is a very distinct Christian concept, right? Salvation refers to quote unquote being saved, but then saved from what? Because this whole concept of salvation is rooted in something called original sin, which basically dates back the guilt of the human parampara, all the way from the supposed, fanciful story of Adam and Eve, and then they sinned, so called. I don't know why that is a sin, but again, it's part of human procreation to bear children and whatnot. But apparently, it was a sin, and that sin was an intergenerational sin which carries on to present time. So somehow you had a savior who sort of knocks your door and says that, okay, I'm here to save you from what? From this original sin. Okay, and we don't accept any of this. It is all incongruent with our teachings. But anyway, that's where the word salvation comes from, as the savior, right? And Pujya Samji says, I think this was during the UN Peace Summit or the Millennial Discourse, something that he had, some event that he had attended, where somebody asked Pujya Swamiji that, Swamiji, do you have any parting message, after today's event? And so he said, yes, please save us from all saviors. We don't require saving because we are already saved, because we are already mukta. So, it is, folks, just again, like the third time call out, like if you're on the call, please turn the webcam on. It's a requirement. So I just want to be sure that we're interacting and everyone is there. So if you're hearing me, then please turn it on. Thank you. All right. So, Moksha, so, the story of human life is that we are all born insecure, feeling small, feeling lonely, feeling lowly, and all of these troubles of life plague us. And that gives us an innate sense that somehow we are not free. But the fact of the matter remains that one is ever free, because freedom is one's own swarupa. I am free. It is my swarupa. It is not something to attain or acquire. As we spoke about last time in great detail, and I definitely encourage, just revising some of those concepts. So we talked about praptasya praptihi and apraptasya praptihi. So moksha is praptasya praptihi, which is another way to say it is gaining that which is already gained. And here this gain is only a figurative gain, because you can only gain something you don't have. You can't gain what you are, if that makes sense. If I don't have a phone, I can gain a new phone, but I can't gain who I am. I can only recognize who I am by looking into the mirror or something similar, but I can't gain who I am. This gaining over here is in terms of knowledge. And so the knowledge to be gained over here is not really a gain, but it is a removal of something that we call avidya, ajnana, atma jnana, atma vidya, which is self ignorance. And this self ignorance that one is endowed with prevents one from recognizing one's own swarupa, which is of the nature of freedom, because all bondage only belongs to the person who is under the delusion that he is not free. The one who is deluded into thinking that he is not free is the one who uh, is in pursuit of moksha. It's very beautiful, right? I pursue moksha because I don't think I am free. But the moment I recognize that I'm freedom, both the pursuits of moksha and this whole notion of bondage, they fall apart simultaneously. They fall apart in the wake of self-knowledge. So that is what moksha is, and as one can obviously see at this point, it has nothing to do with this, biblical concept of salvation. So moksha is moksha. Okay. Any questions, or we can proceed to the next section? Okay, let's move on. Anand bhai, if you want to read next.
Yeah, sure. All actions have a purpose. A human being never undertakes deliberate activity without it having a purpose. Even involuntary actions have a purpose, but here we are talking only about those. Prashant, you can scroll.
Yes.
We're talking about only those actions that are voluntary. Voluntary, deliberate actions always presuppose a desirer who, whose desire is never for the action as such, but for the result, the object of desire. There is always some end in view. An object that you have cannot become an object of desire if you know you have it. However, you may have something and not recognize that you have it, and therefore it may become the object of your desire. Thus, the clause, if you know you have it, is important here. For instance, you cannot desire a head over your shoulders since you already have one. Even if you have such a desire, no one can fulfill it, not even the Lord. If you were to ask him why, in spite of all of your devotion and prayers, he has not fulfilled your desire, he could only say, I cannot give you what you already have. When I tell you that I cannot give you something, there are only two possible reasons for my response. One is that I am incapable of giving it to you due to my lack of knowledge, power, or resources. The other possibility is that I can give it to you, but you do not deserve it. You are not qualified to receive it. Therefore, either you are not qualified to receive it or I am not qualified to give it to you. Here, however, the incapacity to give you a head over your shoulders is because you are asking for something you already have. How then can even God give you one? If you want one more head, being God, He can give you a second head. Although I do not know how a second head is going to help you. If the one you already have has not helped you, but He can give it to you, you will have to tell Him, of course, where you would like to put it, like it put. But do not ask Him to give you a head over your shoulders. What you have, He cannot give you. Although you cannot desire an object that you know you have, you can always desire an object that you do not have. There are many things that you do not have, like a green card, a new house, another job, a promotion, a wife, a husband, a children, a trip to a particular place. Anything you do not have, you can desire. Thus, what you do not have can become an object of your desire. Without a purpose, there is no effort, no deliberate activity. Therefore, the Purusha, the person undertakes activities for accomplishing different ends, mainly artha and kama, but also dharma. If this is so, there is a very important question to be asked. Do I want artha and kama for the sake of artha and kama themselves? The answer to this question is what distinguishes the entire Vedic vision of human life from one's usual way of looking at it.
That's quite some content that we've looked at over here. Any thoughts or questions? If not, there are a couple of things to say. So once we had discussed this before, but I think it calls for an additional uh, explanation. When you take an average Joe, just your Joe Smith in the mailroom at your workplace, somebody who's not exposed to this tradition at all. For this person, if you ask, in English terms, obviously Sanskrit will not work, but in English terms, like, what are the two things that you pursue in life? What would they say? They would say that artha and kama, basically securities and pleasure. Okay, that would be the typical response of the average person. So take this as like the first level of, chalo, the starting point of any life form for that matter. Even animals pursue artha and kama. This is not anything unique to human beings, but human beings also start with that capital without the cultural background I'm saying. But then let's say, if you're born and brought up in Bharat or you have some exposure to our Bharatiya traditions, then you've heard these words. It would be you'd have to be living in a bubble or in Bollywood, whichever one of these two, to not have heard dharma and moksha. These words. And maybe if you heard the words also, it may not be understood, but at least that basic vocabulary is there in our language. So then you'll say, okay, that is the next level. Okay, at least somebody knows that, okay, I'm not interested in these things, but I've heard of it. I've heard ki, there is something called Dharma Moksha. Those Babajis, sannyasis, they're all into moksha. Something like that you might have heard of. Okay, then even higher than that, you can say like the next level would really be where you have an individual who's a Hindu, a dharmika Hindu who is following the tradition. But again, it's more like thoda upar se. But again, they at least they've started, and that is much appreciable. So for this person, you have artha, kama, dharma, moksha. Person says, yes, artha and kama are very important to me. It's still the most important thing to me in life. But I want to, do a little bit of dharma also, and I want to do a little bit of moksha also. Because again, that orientation is action orientation of doing. Though it is that appreciation is not there of what it is. Then, as one matures further, you take the next level of maturity. The person will say that, it's dharma, the kama, moksha, because dharma comes first. It is through dharma I accomplish artha, through dharma I accomplish kama. It is also through dharma that I pursue moksha. Okay, without dharma, you can't do these things because then you'll be violating your basic duties. And if you violate your basic duties, what is moksha? Doesn't work. You can't do that. And that's why, a person who's, I think we've spent a lot of time discussing that, and I'm happy to again. But if you don't have some functional maturity, you, me, anybody, if one doesn't have functional, I have to start learning to use one instead of you because it sounds very accusatory. But if one doesn't have functional maturity, then moksha will always elude. It will always evade. It will never be within one's grasp because oftentimes, in fact, more often than not, moksha will become an escape route for living a fulfilling and dutiful life as a contributing member of society. That's what happens usually. So, a functional identity and a functional role that one plays as a dharmi is very important. That's why I think some of you may have seen that WhatsApp post of Swami Prakashananda Indraji, who gave that example of the person who used to come to this satsang on a regular basis. But then they would just start donating to missionaries, and they would advertise it and announce it very boldly in those satsanga circles that, oh, I donated money to this Mother Teresa ka whatever foundation, something, something. So then Swamiji said to this person that, are you are you aware of how much harm that is actually doing to our society? Because obviously, I don't think I need to share this with anyone. It's obvious that donating money to missionaries is going to be used to convert Hindus to Christianity. What else? I mean, that is what Mother Teresa and all did, right? So, this person obviously was blissfully unaware of the harms that he was committing against his own people. And so, this doesn't work. You can't be oblivious to some basic aspects and basic facts of dharma while simultaneously saying that, oh, moksha matters a lot to me, because it can't. Okay. So let's put it this way. When you or when one begins to appreciate what dharma is, then there is no longer a compromise one has to make on any of the other purusharthas, because they all seem to be using dharma as a meta purushartha to accomplish those goals. I can use dharma to accomplish artha kama moksha. Okay, good. Now, as that maturity grows even further, you begin to see that now that we brought dharma in the forefront, and one doesn't have a problem leading a dharmic life, there is no struggle in leading a dharmic life. It becomes a very natural state of being for a person to express oneself dharmically in all walks of life. So, for this person, this person alone, okay, not anybody else, but for this person alone who has gained some mastery and some accomplishment as a dharmi, where he doesn't even have anything to achieve in terms of dharma, because he has lived such a beautiful and you can say you know just a life that is beyond any reproach. You can't like point at that person and be like, oh, what a horrible man. You can't do that. This kind of person, if you take, that person alone is equipped and able to even let go of dharma. This is the problem, by the way. In many Hindu circles, people want to let go of dharma very quickly because they say we want to jump towards moksha. Why not bother? I mean, why bother with dharma? Let's bypass it completely. Let's build a bridge over dharma and just skip over to the valley of moksha. That is the, the mentality, which is a very problematic mentality. But with some mastery over dharma, dharma also falls away and moksha comes in the forefront. So now it is moksha dharma kama. Moksha dharmartha kama. And what I mean by that is that every single thing is done only for the sake of mukti. First, it was all separated. See, dharma first, and this is a very subtle difference, but it's a very important difference. Dharma, when we brought dharma to the forefront, dharma acted as a meta purushartha while the other purusharthas existed simultaneously. But when you bring moksha to the forefront, it is also acting as a meta purushartha, but in this case, it also subsumes the other purusharthas, and that is the difference. That is the heightened understanding that moksha, and it is for moksha's sake alone that everything else is also done. Because when you live your life with a vision of the Shastra that is clear, that the vision of the self which is not separate from this the whole Jeev Jagat Ishvara, separation itself is a false conception. When that understanding is clear, then everything else becomes in service of moksha. And so that is precisely what, so essentially what we are saying is that there is no other purushartha except moksha. Essentially, that's what happens. And so what we see here in the last sentence or the second last sentence, if this is so, there is a very important question to be asked. Do I want artha and kama for the sake of artha and kama themselves? And this is what Pujya Samji is referring to as the Vedic vision of life. One begins to see that I don't want artha for the sake of artha, I don't want kama for the sake of kama, I don't even want dharma for the sake of dharma for that matter. I want it only for the sake of moksha, because moksha is the meta pursuit underlying every single other pursuit, for the basic reason that when I pursue anything, I am trying to gain a certain freedom from XYZ. Wealth, freedom from poverty. Friends, freedom from loneliness. Job, freedom from just sitting idle and not having anything to do. Right? Basic securities, whatever it may be. Health, freedom from disease. So then when I begin to see that what is common in all of these expressions is the word freedom. And so then I begin to see that, it wasn't those things I was seeking. It was freedom alone that I was after. Freedom from this, freedom from that, freedom from A, freedom from B, freedom from C. Common denominator, freedom. And therefore, all that one ever seeks is moksha, but the one who recognizes it is a mumukshu. The mumukshu is one who recognizes that it is moksha alone that I was seeking in and through every other thing that I was seeking. And therefore, moksha not only precedes all the other purusharthas, but at some point, moksha becomes the only purushartha. And that truly, believe me on this, that alone is the mark of a mature student of Vedanta. The mark of a mature student of Vedanta is not somebody who attends 5 satsangas a week or 6 satsangas a week or listens to pravachans and all. It is one who day in and day out has the vision of mukti alone as one's dhyaya, as one's mission, as one's vision, as one's pursuit, and in the service of that pursuit for total freedom, unhinged, uninterrupted, unceasing freedom, everything else is also done. And it happens on its own. It just happens out of the way. Because moksha is the main purushartha, and then Ishvara takes care of everything else. It is a promise. No, Ananya Chintayantuma Mejana Paripasati. That whole promise is given that if you keep me front and center, and you see me as not different from yourself, I will take care of everything else in life. That's what Krishna Bhagwan promises Arjuna. Krishna Bhagwan here stands for Ishvara. Krishna Bhagwan stands for the self, Ishvara. So this is something that is expressed in the last two sentences. Okay. Any questions here, or shall we? Let's take 10 seconds and a 10-second awkward silence to see if there's any questions, and if not, we'll move to the next section.
Nishanti, I have a question.
Haji.
Yeah. So my question is about uh, dharma. So,
Mhm.
like the present day Hindu, uh, as a present day Hindu, we don't mostly don't really know about what the Dharma Shastras say and what Dharma is actually about. So we mostly have notions of Dharma from, let's say, TV series or a little bit of reading that we've done. So
Hmm.
my question really is, with the limited amount of knowledge of Dharma that we possess, if we wish to lead a dharmic life, uh, not knowing Sanskrit, not knowing what exactly the Dharma Shastras say, how best can we follow a dharmic life?
This is a beautiful question. I think we should take the next 5, 10, 15 minutes just discussing this part. So, I wish my Sanskrit were fluent, but there's a shloka in the Puranas where Ved Vyasaji says, and I'll just paraphrase it in English. And if anyone knows a shloka, feel free to paste it in the chat. In half a shloka, I will give you the essence of entire Sanatana Dharma. Okay, but in order to gain punya, or dharma over here, help others. In order to gain papam, hurt others. So this is the very basic rule that like it doesn't require any understanding or exposure to the dharma shastras. Just a basic appreciation. Like even today, like I was explaining to my 5-year-old Ambika that what is this punya pap. She was asking me like because today we went to the park. It was late in the evening, in fact, just before satsanga, and I thought I'll take her out for a walk. And then she saw a police car, in the park. And so then she asked me that, oh, why do we need the police? I'm like, here, this good and bad is not for adults, it's for children. We treat things in terms of dharma and adharma, not good and bad. But what will you tell a 5-year-old? So you have to say, you're bad people, good people, right? That kind of thing. So then we were talking about it. Then it's to protect good people from the bad people. It's Paritrana sadhu nam sort of thing, right? But then she was like, oh, but then what makes a person bad? A very nice question from a 5-year-old. It's like a person who's bad, and today I introduced her to the concept of punya and pap. See, a person who's bad is one who hurts others, and a person who is good who helps others. Simple. Like you can't, I guess, make it more fundamental than that. And so, as a person begins to live by this golden rule that you do unto others, it's a very beautiful golden rule. It's there in all societies. Then Dharma Shastra sort of take a backseat because I'll be very honest about that. Even at Asha Vidya Gurukulam, for instance, you'll not see the gurus, acharyas, teaching the Dharma Shastra specifically because for several reasons. First is that a lot of it is inferred through the life of a guru. When you look at a great Mahatma, you don't have to spell out what acharan is being done over the course of the day. You just have a snapshot of what that person looks like, what that person speaks, what that person, how the person interacts, how the person comports themselves in front of a group. And you already have a very deep understanding of what it means to be a dharmic individual when you look at the acharyas. So that is one very good way to go about it. The second is that many of the Dharma Shastras, Dharma has really three, aspects to it you can see. You have something called Samanya Dharma, you have Vishesha Dharma, and you have Swadharma. Um, Now, Samanya Dharma is known to everyone. You don't need any special education for that. Do unto others, Samanya Dharma. I don't want, Puja Samji says, if I don't want to feel hurt, then I don't hurt. Simple reason. And if I want to be happy, I make others happy. So that is Samanya Dharma. Vishesha Dharma is very specific. A lot of Dharma Shastras actually go into more specifics of Vishesha Dharma. They don't talk about Samanya Dharma. Frankly speaking, 90% of our dharmic sankatas and conundrums will be resolved if we just follow Samanya Dharma at least to start with. And then Vishesha Dharma is built on top of Samanya Dharma, which is that, what is your role as a PhD student or a postdoc, researcher? What is my role as a data analytics professional? What is my role as a male? What is my role towards my community as a Gujarati? What is my role as a parent? What is my role as a citizen? What is my role as a husband? What is my role as a son? And all of these are very specific. What is my role given my age? What is my role given my circumstances? What is my role towards society given my finances? All of these things. So when we come to Vishesha Dharma, it becomes very specific to the individual, and it becomes very specific to the age and stage and the era within which one lives. And so many of the Dharma Shastras were, obviously the Samanya components of it are universal, but the Vishesha components of it are conditioned by space and time and situation. Space, time, situation, Desh, Kala, and Parasthiti. Right? Those are the three things that one has to consider. And some of them may be applicable, some of them may not be applicable. And as time changes, now suppose somebody says, okay, look, people for some reason distort the Manusmriti, and they abuse it, saying that, oh, it's such a patriarchal text. Arey bhai, it's a product of the times, and there are many beautiful things in it also. Like the Satyam Bruyat, Priyam Bruyat. Where does it come from? Manusmriti, na? And it still applies even to us today. But there may be certain things in the Smritis and such which may not be completely applicable today, such as, after a person gets widowed, perhaps there's a certain life that one has to live. Like Pujya Swamiji's mother, Pujya Swamiji lost his father when he was 7 or 8 years old. And so his mother had to basically live like a sadhvi for the rest of her life. You have to shave your head, and you have to just stay in your kutia, and you can't interact a lot with society. So now those things, those times have changed. Those social mores have also, I guess, undergone certain shifts. And so once you get into the Dharma Shastra territory, it becomes very interpretative, and it becomes very difficult to work with the students to figure out like what works best for them. I'll give you one simple Dharma Sankar that I also had, that I asked one of my acharyas, and I'm not going to give the response because it was specific to me. But it's more like, in our Shastra, there are certain ideas that when the physical body dies, you have to do this Agni Samskara, right? Antim Samskara. And then you have to offer the body to Agni Devta. And, the Sthula Sharira is returned back, and, turns into ash, and it is scattered in the environment. And you return all of your organs and everything back to, the organs of action return back to the Devtas, and the organs of knowledge also return back to their respective Devtas. And then this is what you do. But then the question was that, okay, if you're supposed to, the body has to be not khandit, akhandit. Khandit means, today if you have a murti, and if the murti breaks, then you say murti khandit ho gayi hai, which means that the murti is broken. You need to offer it into the sea or something, and then you need to get a new murti, install a new murti, and do the prana pratishtha and all. You can't have a khandit murti. So now the question is that, can you offer a khandit body to Agni Devta, right? In other words, if I put down in my will that, okay, after I die I want to donate my eyes, I want to donate my liver, my kidneys, this whatever. Now how does that work? Because I was just wondering about it, because by common sense, my understanding was that, okay, it makes sense that, okay, if your body is going to return back to the elements, you might as well allow your organs to be donated to somebody for better use. And then I started thinking even more deeply about this. I'm like, okay, but what if somebody uh, uses your organs, but maybe they are criminal minded? What happens? Because see, in our Shastra, there's another principle which says that anytime you give danam, you have to be very clear about the recipient, the quality of the recipient of the dana. Which means that if I want to give money to somebody because I'm a nice person, they say you should do charity for dharma, na? But I can't go give it to Mother Teresa's foundation. That is adharma, in fact, because that is the stupidest, most foolish thing you can do. Or you can't go give money to a terrorist organization, for instance. Just give an example, obviously. But therefore, how can I ensure that my organs are going to go to the right person after I die? And so then you have to think more about this, and you have to be like, okay, maybe I should will my organs to specific people or whatever. If I know that this person is a good person, if that person is ailing from something or whatever at that point. So then you can get, like, let's say if your death is impending, you're going to die in like a week or something. Get your family members to research like decent dharmic people who need this, so that it doesn't get sent out in the ether, and it's like a lottery ticket that somebody is going to pick up the lottery and they'll receive organs, because you don't know who they are. So you can do a lot of these things. If you think about it, dharma has so many considerations that the more you think about it, the more refined your understanding gets also about dharma and adharma. So anyway, I had this conversation with one of my teachers, and then the answer became clear, but it was specific to my situation. It may be different for somebody else also. So anyway, That's one of the reasons why, like in the Gurukulam, for instance, they won't get deeply into these dharma shastras, because there are so many conundrums to deal there, that the question answer session will last longer than the pravachan. So, and it doesn't work, especially when the teachers are teaching like 70, 80 people. Okay. So now the next thing that I that you mentioned is, okay, so then how do you approach this? First is, you look at the lives of Mahatmas. The closest Mahatma to you is your guru. Look at the life of your guru. I often find myself, what would Pujya Swamiji do in this situation? I get mad at, I do have a short fuse at times. And so then again, like I snap back because I think about that. Okay, what would Pujya Swamiji do? How would he comport himself? How would he present himself? How would he communicate this point? Then Pujya Swamiji taught that, okay, have a two-step reaction, which means that between you and the other person, create some space with this idea. What is the idea? You trigger me. You really get under my nerves. You are a big headache for me. Every time I see you, I lose it. This happens. I'm sure everybody has had some person in their life with whom they've lost it this way, right? That you get triggered very easily. So Pujya Swamiji says that just have one basic understanding. Every person that you interact with has a background. You have a background, and you are a sum of all of your past experiences which have made you a certain way. Based on that background, you are confined to reacting in the manner that you do, and there is nothing I can do to control that. You are confined to reacting. You are almost like constrained by your background, which is why you will behave in the certain way that you do. And so, if I know who you are, if I understand your background, then that background becomes a buffer between you and I, where I automatically present myself across to you more compassionately. Because that background has made me more empathetic to your unique circumstances, that makes you trigger me. And in the light of this understanding, I am no longer triggered. Beautiful, isn't it? Everybody has this background. So Pujya Swamiji says that this is a two-step reaction. When you want to say something to somebody and you're just about to get triggered, remember there's a background. And remember that just as other people trigger you, you yourself may be triggering other people as well. And you yourself have a certain background, and there are certain things that just escape your lips, even if you don't want to say it. And you would expect the other person to behave as empathetically even towards you as you should towards them. So that two-step reaction of a background is very beautiful. Next time you know somebody in your life who really gets under your nerves, some of you, just make sure that you recognize where they're coming from. That's one point. Second point, Pujya Swamiji says is, oh, but there might be certain people whose background I don't know, and they still trigger me. So then how can I get over that? It could be somebody on the street, or it could be somebody who's rude, on the freeway, or somebody at the store who's cutting lines, or whatever it may be. Then Pujya Swamiji said, in that case, you don't need to know the Vishesha background, the specifics of the background, but at least you are smart enough to know that there is a background, even if you don't know what the background is. And that is background, that there is a background, you substitute that with Ishvara, because you realize that everybody is playing this role in Ishvara Shrishti. And whether I know your background or whether I'm oblivious to your background, that you have a background will again create that buffer. And recognizing that a person has a background is recognizing that there is an Ishvara Shrishti, there is an order within which everybody's role is embedded. Everybody has a role to play, and all of these roles are embedded within this large, grand cosmic order that Ishvara has beautifully woven and presented. And so that is another thing, right? So again, like, these are small ways in which your gurus are able to guide you to live a more dharmic life. Okay, so guru acharan, recognizing that people have a background, do unto others, this golden rule thing, to attain punya, help others, to gain papam, hurt others. Then what else? Look at the lives of the Aitihasic Mahatmas. Ram Bhagwan, Krishna Bhagwan. Look at the in life of Bhishma Pitamaha. Look at if you want an ideal brother, look at Lakshmana or Bharataha. If you want an ideal, want to see what an ideal wife is like, look at Sita Ma. Ideal son, ideal husband, Rama. We'll get to this whole thing. Oh, people are like, oh, was he really an ideal husband? Yes, he was. And we can talk 1 hour for that. On this whole topic about how Rama as Bhagwan was actually a perfected jiva. I mean, Ishvara rather, Avatara, not a jiva. Sorry, Avatara. So there's no question of ideal or non-ideal. Avatara means perfect only. What else you can say? We'll come to that one day if anybody has any doubts. about certain dhobi related incidents. Now, um, Sumanji, yes,
Yeah, I do have the doubts
you
and
do.
love to, yeah.
Okay, then let's come
Of
back to
course.
that point after this one. Wonderful. All right. Okay, so then that is one thing, right? Look at the Aitihasic characters. Look at your Puranic characters, because the Puranas are a compression of all the archetypes into beautiful, rich, layered stories, beautiful ones, and very true also, for that matter, depending on how one understands the purport of those teachings. Look at, ideal bhakta Prahlad, beautiful. We just had Holi recently, right? So what better bhakta than Prahlad? Or you look at, this whole story of Ganesha and Parvati Ma and Shiva, where he goes around them, like this respect towards parents. So my point is that there are so many places and sources that one can refer to that one doesn't even require to study the Dharma Shastras in depth. Next point is that you look at, and this helps, by the way. I'm sure just as everybody has certain crackpots in their family, everybody has at least one family member whom you look up to, who you think presents themselves in a very mature and dignified manner. Everybody has somebody like that in family. Look up to your purvajas. Look up to, it could be your pitrus, it could be maybe your grandfather or your grandmother or somebody that you would feel comforted in their presence, that whose very being was a source of great comfort and well-being. And so, just put yourself in their shoes and figure out that, okay, how would I behave if I were them? It's very important to do that. And I often, again, like, it's going back, like, okay, what would Puja Swamiji say? What would Adi Shankaracharya ji do in this situation? What would Ram Bhagwan do in this situation? When you put yourself in the shoes of Mahatmas, it is not a disrespect to the shoes, but rather we are making our feet bigger. That's all we are doing. We are actually making our feet bigger by actually trying to fit into their shoes. And in some sense, we become bigger in doing that. Because one way or the other, we will fit their proportions when we value the Daivi Sampati as opposed to the Asura Sampati. Daivi Sampati means, the wealth, the gunas, the qualities of the Devas and the Mahatmas. And Asuri Sampati are the quality of those people who are adharmis, who are of low character, of low integrity, who are not dignified, who are callous. These people, these are all Asuri quality, Asura qualities. So these are just some basic templates that one can keep in mind. Haji, Anandji.
So I just have one follow-up question. I'll make it quick.
Sure.
So you said we can look at the lives of ITHASIC personalities for pointers, right? And also the Vishesha Dharma that you mentioned is also a product of the time that we are in, right? So if today, if I look at, let's say, Ram Bhagwan's life for a more dharmic way of living, uh, perhaps some parts of the Vishesha Dharma of Ram Bhagwan may not be applicable today, right? So is it still applicable? Is it still relevant today? Is one question. And if it is not, then it would be a very difficult situation for us, because then there are so many possibilities, right? You can say that this is not applicable, that's not applicable. Then we can just say whatever we are doing is dharma.
Hmm.
So then how do we then like know whether we're living a dharmic life?
Huh. So that's a very fine question, and that's a beautiful question. So let's look at this a little bit, and this will probably tie into like Sumanji's also, because now let's analyze. How shall we say? If you look at, like, take a Venn diagram of all the things that are common with, say, Ram Bhagwan, his yuga, his times, and what's common in our times, you'll see that the area of overlap is actually pretty large. I'll give you an example of like why as human beings we tend to see differences more starkly. The difference between a man and a woman, there are actually more similarities between members of the same species and differences. But because we are so acutely aware because of our evolutionary, I guess, evolution for that matter, we are very attuned to see the things that are different. But if you see genetically speaking by your DNA, okay, four limbs, two eyes, nose, lips, hair, everything, right? There's not much more different, but the differences are so minute, and yet we are so starkly aware of them. In the same manner, if you see the differences between Ram Bhagwan's life and our life, only the superficial things are different. Okay, today you don't have to be jatadhari, and you don't have to wear, the bark of trees and go into the forest and, hunt and this and that and all. You don't have to do that. But Ram Bhagwan had a certain role as a child. We also are children of our parents. We are also fathers of our children or mothers of our children. We also have siblings, this and that and all, right? So these things are there. We also have certain duties towards our spouses and whatnot. So all of these things, there are many commonalities over there, but the differences are mostly at the, lifestyle level. The differences are lifestyle based, not role based so much. Because the roles, you will always find that there is something common. Okay, let's take a simple example. They say that the story of, Narasimha Avatara is even older than Ram Bhagwan. It goes back yugas and yugas. I don't even know what yuga it is at that point. But that Narasimha ji ka jo story hai, does bhakti of Prahlad change compared to the bhakti that we have to represent now? No. The bhakti element is still the same. If you take Bharata, the devotion as a brother, today somebody may have an inheritance issue in the family. Inheritance issue with Hannah, this was an inheritance issue. How many people, okay, don't be specific, but how many people in your family, how many people have encountered an inheritance issue in your immediate or extended family? I'm sure there are people here, right? What would Bharata do in that situation? Would he, give Rama or whoever it may be in your family the rightful belongings in a very dignified manner? Okay, that applies. Take this Satya Vachanam. Dashrath ji made a promise. Now, somebody may say that it was a foolish promise, but he made a promise. He made a promise to Kaikai because she rescued him in the battlefield, and she was a very valorous uh, Yodha herself. She was actually a warrior herself, and they say that she was from this Afghanistan region, like the whole Kabul, Gandhar, that region. So anyway, so she helped Dashratha during a battle. He was knocked unconscious or something, and she rescued him, while at the same time with one hand she took charge of the chariot, and she drove Dashratha away from the battlefield, and she saved his life basically. So Dashratha, nowadays they've turned this into a negative thing. They say don't make decisions when you're angry and don't make promises when you're happy. But Dashratha ended up making a promise when he was very happy that, Arey Harsh, you saved my life. You tell me, I'll give you anything that you want. I'll give you three wishes like a genie. I'm your special genie, and you rescued me, and now three wishes for you, that kind of thing. And she took advantage of that. Now, in today's times, somebody will say, "Oh, you vile, cruel, cunning woman, this is what you want from me?" No, sorry, not doing that. But remember who Dashratha was. He was a king. He was a leader. He was a noble man. He was a man of integrity. He was the father of an avatara. Dashrathaji was not an ordinary person. If the father of an avatara were to tell a lie, what would you think of the avatara? Would you say that the avatara was born in a great family, in a great kula? It was a spotless kula. The Surya Vansh kula was a spotless kula. And Dashratha kept his integrity, he kept his word, and he died because of it. He died of heartbreak. He died because he had to banish Ram Bhagwan into the forest, and he died of a broken heart because of that incident. And yet he kept his word. Now today, how many incidents at our workplace? How many small lies do we tell? How many white lies do we tell? How many times do say a certain thing but you mean something else? How many times do we do? At least once a day. And Dashratha, he died for his for keeping his word. So, see, there are so many things that we can actually learn just by looking at these characters, and if you think about it, it is very applicable. Take another great example. One of the names of Krishna Bhagwan is Bhishma Yukti Mukti Pradayakaya Namaha in this Ashtotara. Bhishma ji fought on the side of the Kauravas. But what was his reason? Was he a stupid person? No, he was a brilliant wise man. Wise man, huh? Not an ordinary person. A, a great warrior, the greatest perhaps. In fact, he was the greatest warrior in the Mahabharata period, greater than Arjuna also. He could defeat everybody if he wanted, if he really put his heart into it, but he didn't want to. And he was a great teacher. The Purva Bhaga of the Vishnu Sahasranama, it is Bhishma ji who is actually teaching Yudhishthira the economics, and he's teaching him statecraft, and how to be a great king, how to be a great leader, how to be a good person. And then finally, he recites the 1,000 names of Vishnu Bhagwan, because after all this education that Bhishma gives, he's laying on his bed of arrows, Varashigya, and he's you know just letting blood, and he's dying, and he's in so much pain. In fact, there's one part in the Mahabharata where, I think if somebody else recalls, he's asking for water because his lips are so parched, and it is in the sun, and for 18 days, or I don't know how long, he's lying in the sun. And then Duryodhana comes with water, and he's like, no, not from you. I don't want to drink the water. He says, Arjuna will give me water. And so Arjuna shoots this bow, and it makes a parabolic curve, and it hits the ground, and there's a groundwater underneath, and it comes like a fountain, and Bhishma drinks water, right? So again, this person was not an ordinary person, but Bhishma ji fought on the side of Kauravas. He knew they were wrong. He tried to convince them. He even revealed the trick to his own demise. He said that, I will not shoot at a woman, and so that's why they put what's his name? Arey, I forget. Yeah, somebody, please.
Yeah, Shrikhandi.
Shikhandi. They put Shikhandi in front of the chariot, so Bhishma would be disarmed. Right? Bhishma wouldn't shoot at a woman, and she was she he it was a woman in the previous janma.
Trans. Yeah.
Ha. And so so this is another problem on LinkedIn, by the way. Everybody puts he, her, she, whatever. Like, don't do that. Please don't do that. There's a whole reason behind why they make you do that. Um. Okay, sorry. I'll not get into criticizing wokeism today. That's a topic for a different day. All right. And so Bhishma ji made two pratignyas. Pratignya is a promise. The first was, until the very last day that I am on this planet, I will protect the Kuru throne. The Kuru throne will be protected by me at all costs. That's one. Second, the vow of celibacy. Because actually, who was Dhritarashtra? He was a useless king. He was blind mentally also, and he was blind physically also. He couldn't see and he couldn't think. Both problems he had. Now, what happens? Okay, I'm going to stray a little bit, but bear with me. When your parents are blind, when one parent has a health impediment, what should the second one do? The second one has to be like, now I have to take charge. I have to fill the gap that the first absent parent has left. So the first parent couldn't see. So the second one, super smart lady that she was, she blindfolded herself also. So now both parents are blind, and the children are going to be blind only. Na? Not, if not, physically blind, then they'll be mentally blind. So all of these children were given free reign. The thing is that parents have to be very watchful of their children to make sure that the children are growing well. But here both parents like stupid. One was the born blind, the other was willfully blind. And so, the children grew up in a certain way. The actual king, who would be the rightful heir to the Kuru throne, who was actually the legitimate, by quality, I'm saying, even by quality ruler, was Bhishma. But he abdicated that right because of a promise that he made. Okay. Now, in this regard also, Bhishma kept his promise. But let's understand one thing very beautifully, because this ties to like Anand Bhai's question about what applies and what doesn't. Bhishma was old school. He was unflinching in keeping his word, and that is admirable. That is why, even though he fought for the Kurus, he attained moksha. Bhishma Yukti Mukti Pradayakaya Namaha, name of Sri Krishna. He is the one who delivered mukti to Bhishma Pitamaha. But Bhishma Pitamaha, um, so sorry, what was I saying? He The reason he was old school is because he did not see that times have changed, and the same rules of Treta Yuga don't apply to Dwapara Yuga anymore, and this was almost Kali Yuga about to start. Now there are different accounts of Kali Yuga. Some say that Kali Yuga starts when during the 10th or 11th day of the war, and some say that it starts after this whole Parikshit incident, and this crown, and Kali sort of takes hold over him and whatnot. Forget that. Let's just say that this was on the edge of Dwapara and Kali Yuga, and somewhere in between they were fighting a war. Now, what happened is the Kauravas were all fighting with deceit, very deceitfully. They were fighting. They were cheating in the war. They all ganged up on Abhimanyu, and all of these things happened. Bhishma Pitamaha would obviously not condone that. He did not condone that at all. But at the same time, Krishna Bhagwan heralded a new interpretation of dharma for the yuga, which is, if you cheat in poker, I'm also going to cheat in poker. If you cheat and I play straight, then it is all lost. So you can only follow the rules of warfare. See, because even if you look at Ramayana, Ravana did not actually do any kapat in the battle. He fought like a true warrior. Both Ravana and Rama fought like true warriors. But Duryodhana and Karna, in fact, Karna is one of the most vile characters that you will encounter in the Mahabharata. It's a different story. A lot of people praise Karna, oh, Danveer Karna. He was a stupid person. He was a person with emotional issues who should never, ever have been part and parcel of of uh, of the Kurukshetra Yuddha. In fact, it is Karna who was goading Duryodhana to keep fighting. Okay. But okay, so Krishna Bhagavan said, all bets are off. When Abhimanyu was slain unjustly, Krishna Bhagavan started pulling a lot of tricks out of his bag. And now a lot of people who don't understand Dharma say that, oh, Krishna was a kapati. Krishna was a prankster. He was just, playing games and he was fooling people and he was deceiving people. All of these things. When he was young, he was a prankster with the gopis. And as an adult, he became a deceitful character. That is what stupid people say who don't understand Krishna. But the fact remains that Krishna Bhagavan knew that in order to protect Dharma in a larger scale, sometimes you need to violate Dharma at a smaller scale. And so now if you see, if it were Ram Bhagavan during the Kurukshetra, he would have lived the way Bhishma would have lived. But Krishna Bhagavan heralded a new understanding of Dharma, which brought about slight changes. But here is the point I'm trying to make: the differences between, let's say, the Lanka Yuddha and the Kurukshetra Yuddha are almost inapplicable in most things that we really do, except for the fact that one has to cultivate the principle of reciprocity where it holds. So I'll give you a simple example. When the Hindus were being um, pillaged by the Muslim invaders, I don't like to call them anything else except invaders and barbarians, because that is what they are. So when these Muslim barbarians and invaders were actually invading our country, they knew that Hindus don't fight after sunset. The Mahabharata also, we didn't fight after sunset. Remember the whole thing about how Jarasandha was slain,
Yeah.
and the fake sunset was, with the eclipse and whatever.
Yeah.
So Hindus have this very nice ethic that, you don't attack somebody when they are not looking at you. You don't poke somebody in the back, or you don't gang up on people and this and that. And so we had these rules of warfare, and we followed those. And there are granthas where this is explained as well. But Muslims took advantage of that, and they would rape and attack women in the night. They would set tents on fire when people were sleeping. All of these things. Now, Krishna Bhagwan would have probably had a regiment that was staying awake and alert at night to fight these people. Because when you cheat in poker, I have to cheat in poker. When you look at my cards, I have to look at your cards. I can't play by my rules when you break your rules. And so that reciprocity has to be heralded in our transactions. If somebody is messing with you, you can't say this whole Gandhigiri, slap the other cheek, please. You break the teeth if you have to. Okay, don't turn the other cheek. Doesn't work. So small instances, but if you see in 99.9% of our daily transactions, we don't have to meet these extreme circumstances. It's usually where we make somebody feel bad about themselves. It's usually when we talk down to other people. It's usually when we aren't compassionate, or we are, telling too many white lies, which are not any different from lies anyway. And if all of these things can be taken into account, you'll see that Ram Bhagwan is as applicable as Krishna Bhagwan. The differences are very minute. That's all I'm saying. And so and a person with any capacity to think will know what's applicable. So that is one thing. And I think to Sumanji's point, sorry, was mentioned. Let me read that shloka. Even I forgot. Yes, yes, beautiful. Thank you for that. So this there are a couple of incidents in Ram Bhagwan's life that people cast aspersions on. One is this killing of Wali, and the second is this whole Agni Pariksha incident. There's two incidents that people talk about, and they talk about it because they don't understand Ram Bhagwan. So, in terms of the killing of Wali, I encourage everyone to read the dialogue that occurs between Wali and Ram Bhagwan while Wali is dying. So, on Wali's deathbed, there's a conversation where he's actually accusing Rama. He's telling Sri Rama that, oh, how could you shoot me in the back like an animal? And if you had told me that you were here, wanting to rescue your wife, I would have, I would have helped you in that as well. You didn't ask me for help, and yet you just slayed me as an animal. You killed me, and I had no enmity with you. I had nothing. He's like, actually, I don't blame Wali, because if somebody is dying and, like, you get shot or something, like, yeah, you're gonna feel really bad about it. You're probably gonna try to guilt trip the other person. But Ram Bhagwan is compassionate over there, but he is also very firm. He gives very exact answers and precise reasons as to why Wali deserved to die. He was an Atatai in some sense, right? In the sense that he, first of all, took away someone's wife, and then he captured somebody's territory, usurping someone's land. So in many ways, like, there were things which were meriting capital punishment. Then he's like, oh, how could you shoot me in the back? So he's like, oh, yeah, because that is a dharma. We just talked about that. You have to, you can't stab someone in the back, or you can't shoot them when they're not turned towards you. He said, no, because you're an animal, you're not a manushya, and you can shoot animals in the back. So every single thing, there's a very beautiful justification, and you see that Ram Bhagwan is beyond reproach. You can't say that, Arey, you made a mistake here. You can't. Now, if you look at this whole incident of the Sita Ma also, there are different, I guess, interpolations, and God knows, like, what is the actual thing. But let's go with Valmiki ji's original work. First of all, Ramayana ends with what? With the coronation. Okay, so this whole thing about Sita Ma being sent away into the forest, that is not there in Valmiki Ramayana. Ramayana means Valmiki Ramayana. After that, I'm not dismissing Tulsidas ji and others. They are great people. But let's just say that after that point, these are all stories. Ramayana actually ends with Ram Bhagwan being coronated and Ram Rajya. He is ruling for a very, very long time, and Bharat is prosperous again. That is the end of Ramayana. But so one incident we can dismiss, that this whole Sita Ma being sent away into the forest and Love Kush being born there and this and that you dismiss. It is a part of the Uttarakanda, which Pujya Swamiji says, and he says this. Uttarakanda is probably the work of somebody with psychological issues, daddy issues, mommy issues. Because if you see Uttarakanda, the tonality is so different from the rest of Ramayana that you'll be like, "Arey bhai, chipka hai kisi ne idhar." It is not part of the. It's not. It doesn't fit within the narrative also. Okay, that's one point. Second point is that, okay, then what about this Agni Pariksha? Because that is there in the Yudhakanda. Is there? See, Ram Bhagwan was first and foremost not a husband. He was first and foremost a Chakravarti. He was a Raja. He was about to be coronated as the end all be all of rulers of Bharatvarsha, of all the states, not a princely state, but all the United States of Bharatvarsha. He was ruling Akhanda Bharata at that point, and he was on the edge of just about to be coronated. Second point is, today, let's say if Mr. Modi ji does something that somebody considers disreputable or whatever, he can't say that, hey, chupkar, this is not none of your business. It's my personal affair. You don't say anything to me. No, he is accountable to 1.3 crore, or sorry, 130 crore Indian people. He's accountable to everybody because yatha raja tatha praja. The example that the king sets will be followed by every single person who takes that as an example, especially if it's a shreshta. Shrestha as a person, it's Gita mein bhi hai na, yat yat acharati Shrestha, something like that. That as the wise men or the great men or the Mahatmas in society behave, I will also behave that way. So suppose Ram, a lot of people say, oh, how could he do this as a husband? See, suppose he said that you keep your mouth shut, she's my wife, my personal affairs, you don't butt your nose. Other people will also behave like him. And so he had a responsibility for the welfare of the state to give sound justifications for everything that he did. And suppose, okay, he said that, look, I have complete faith in my wife. I know that she is, a reputable character. I know she has integrity. I know she would not do anything that is unfitting. Then what would happen? There will always be some chugli walas in society. Somebody will always do chugli. Somebody will always gossip. Somebody will always say, "Ah, no, I know what she was hiding. I know what she was hiding. That's why they're trying to put this under wraps." In fact, in order to protect her integrity, knowing full well that she was a woman of integrity, he allowed her to go through the Agni Pariksha to shut everyone up. But suppose he had denied her that opportunity to do the Agni Pariksha, people would be talking and they would keep talking and they would keep talking. And just as you have gossip mongers today, you had gossip mongers always. In all yugas, there are gossip mongers. So he does the appropriate thing and he says that, you know what? It's like, how shall you say? If you trust somebody with something, you allow them to do it so that everybody else keeps their mouth shut. That's what it is all about, right? It's like he allowed her to take he in fact he took a leap of faith in some sense because he entrusted this in his wife. Now suppose for argument's sake, to be play devil's advocate, suppose Sita Ma was up to no good, then Ram Bhagwan would be doubly messed up, right? He'd be in big trouble. Suppose she got immolated in this Agni, then to not only would he have lost her, but her reputation would have also gone. And therefore, he is actually doing a favor to her to safeguard her name as well as for the to safeguard the Janta from following a bad example. And he's living up to the standards that he has set for himself and likewise for his wife. So now, if you see these two events in the right light, can you say that Ram Bhagwan could be reproached? No. Ishvara. You can find, and a good Hindu does the following. Suppose I am, you know, impertinent enough to find that there is something lacking in the conduct of an avatara, it is my duty as a Hindu to say there is probably something that is lacking in my understanding. Let me address my understanding. Let me not try to address the avatara. This also ties into the fact, let me address my understanding as a student and let me not go and correct my teacher. This is what we call Shraddha. And Shraddhavan labate jnanam. No Shraddha, no jnanam, no nothing, no bhakti, all gone. Shraddha is the basis. Okay, so I think this connects everything together.
Prashant, just one question.
Mhm.
Doesn't Agni Pariksha symbolize something? Because it cannot be just walking on the coals or, walking through the fire. What does that symbolize? I mean,
Purity,
ah,
purity. See, if if you take a,
um,
met, an- a metallic ore, you take iron ore, you take gold ore, you take aluminum ore, any ore for that matter, and you put it in the fire, you smelt it in the fire, then you will see that all these impurities burn up. They burn and they give out this dirty, hazy, dark smoke. When you burn impurities, when you throw like wet wood into the fire, it gives out this, very humid and like, moist smoke, very thick smoke.
got it.
But when you put a pure aluminum blade or you put pure 24 karat gold in the fire, what happens? It burns bright. It glows. It's resplendent. And so this is to symbolize, to mark that yes, of course, Sita Ma is purity. She became brighter than fire when she passed through. But if she was impure, she would have burnt. That's what it is. It's a mark of purity. She was not ore. She was 24 karat gold. That's what it symbolizes. That she was gold when she entered. She was gold when she left.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks for that explanation.
Sure. Any other questions? Okay. So good session. We'll reconvene next time. I think there are a couple of new folks who may or may not be in the WhatsApp group. I don't recall. And Yashaswini ji, I think Can you remind me how you and Navneet joined the group? I just want to get an understanding of where exactly you're getting these links from, so that I can add you to like future notifications.
So through one of the members only.
And so, are you in the WhatsApp group?
No, I'm not. Please add me.
Could you do me a favor? I'm see the chat. I'm pinging you my number. You can just send
Uh-huh.
me a message there so I can add you. 1 second. Huh?
Sure.
8175. Okay, so it's +1, country code +1, and then the rest is the number that follows. And anybody else, you feel free so that I can add you to the group. And Navneet ji, I don't know if you're on the call. Okay, never mind. I'll close the
Prashant
record.
is also not in the WhatsApp group.
You're
No,
not
neither
okay.
in the in the Telegram also.
Okay, so do one
I
thing. No, I've sent you the number on this in the chat bar. So if you can just add me, ping me, and I will add you both, because